Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's Daily Creative Challenge. Actually, this month's Daily Creative Challenge. My name is Spencer Nugent. I'll be your host. I'm an industrial designer, but I use a variety of Adobe products. You've probably seen me here before. So, welcome, welcome if you're joining me live on Behance or on YouTube. Check it out, the Adobe Live channel. We're all over the place, even on Instagram and your favorite social media channels. Today, we'll be doing a creative challenge, and the theme for our challenge is really just around collages. So we're going to be looking at importing photos, how I like to edit them, and just showing you some simple, easy ways to enhance things. We're going to use the power of generative fill in Adobe Photoshop to fix and correct a few things. Also, we'll take a look at Adobe Stock. Now, we don't have any assets today to start. We're just going to start with a blank canvas, and you can start wherever and however you want. So hopping over to Photoshop here, I've created a document. Now, of course, if you've never used Photoshop before, or if you're just new to it, you can just start by creating a new document, Command N on my Mac here. And you'll see that you have some options. So you can pick from the clipboard or you can make a custom size. There's also templates here if you want to start. Now, because this is a collage and hey, it's May, I decided to focus on Mother's Day for my theme. Now, it's important to pick a theme when you're starting any sort of collage or creative work. Thumbnails, of course, help. And I like to think of the topic first and foremost. And actually what I might do with it. So I might be making a card. I might be making just a little printout for my mom, or just something that I'm going to share with her to kind of reflect on our life together. So that may be one theme, or perhaps, and I do these from time to time just as a personal exercise in terms of creating something that is related to something that happens in my life. I know that sounds vague, but it's really fun, right? So pick a template, or pick a size rather, here in the panel, and you should be able to just hit the ground running. So in my case, or in your case, for example, you might want to pick a 5x7 size to start. That's printable, or you could go with something like an 8x10. I decided to go with an 8x10. I'm going to close this dialog here, and we just have our blank canvas. So there's a couple ways to get images into Photoshop, and let's take a look at the first way here. I've gone ahead and downloaded a few of my photos that I've taken over the years, I guess you could say, and just reminiscing. And I'll show you a couple of these here. There's me and my mother. Isn't she darling? She's wonderful. Hopefully she won't be too upset that she's being broadcast to everyone here. And then there's me as a child. I found this little photo of me as a baby, and I think I'm going to incorporate this into the work as well. And for those who don't know, I'm actually from the island of Jamaica, so I'm going to try and pull in some of those thematic elements as well. There's my mother and my father. There's me again, and I've got this random photo here just to kind of use as an example for the piece. So I think I'm going to use this as a central element in my piece. I also have two more scans here, me and my mom, when I think I was maybe 9. And then I have this beautiful photo of her as well. So I'll start with this photo of my mother. If you're following along here, you can use any photo that you want as well. Remember, if you're doing something for Mother's Day, maybe do something with your mom, of course. For me, I'm just gonna go with my mom. So let's pull this in. This one happens to be a JPEG image, and I also have a DNG file that I'm gonna pull in. So for the JPEG image, I'm just gonna drag and drop that into Photoshop here, and we'll take a look at Generative Expand and some of what we can do there first. Mostly because, as you can see, this image, so we'll use Generative Expand, and we'll use remove background as well, first of all. So here in this image, you can see that her hair wrap is a little bit cut off. What's interesting about this photo, though, is just by way of information here, my mom was about the same age I am now, which is kind of weird. Last year was our symmetry year, meaning she is now twice the age she was when I was born, and same age as me. Anyhow, not that you needed to know that. In any case, I've made a selection here, and notice for this selection, because I'm going to be using Generative Expand, I've kind of selected a little bit less than the overall image, and that is so that I can kind of inform the Generative Expand what I'm going to be doing. I'm just trying to pull up chat here in Behance. All right, now I see it. Hello, everyone in Behance. Feel free to say hi. So I've made a selection just a little bit smaller than the photo itself. two ways to do that. I've just carefully selected with the marquee tool, but of course here in our layers panel to the right, I can actually hold command, click on the layer, and it will select those pixels. And just a little trick for those who want to know this, you can also hit select, modify, contract, and you can specify how many pixels you want to contract by. So I might say, okay, 5 pixels in, and it's reduced my marquee by 5 pixels uniformly from that initial selection. So just another way that you can make a smaller selection. So now that I've done that, I'm going to hold Alt and let's see, Alt and Shift on my keyboard. And now I'm going to make a selection, just expanding on the outside because I want to expand her hair wrap a little bit and see what Photoshop comes up with here. So now that I've made my selection, oops, I made the wrong selection there. Let's do this one more time. Okay, so I've inverted my selection and now I'm going to find the overlap, which is right there. There we go. So now I'm just going to hit Generative Fill, and I'm not going to enter anything here. I'm just going to hit Generate and see what happens and see what Photoshop comes up with. All right. Now, these daily creative challenges are meant to challenge you a little bit. So if you've never used the Generative Expand tool or Remove Background, that's your challenge today. Find some images. We're going to enhance these as well. Use Firefly and check out Adobe Stock. All right. So let's see what it came up with here. All right. Looks like it just did the edge. So let me actually, I think it might have to do with the fact that I forgot to rasterize this. So I'm going to right click on my layer because I dragged and dropped from Finder. It's actually kind of working like a smart object instead of just pixels on the canvas here. So I'm going to hit rasterize layer and see if I get a little bit better of a result here. All right, so let's do that one more time. Little selection inside. I'm going to invert that and let us expand here. All right. Let's see what we get. Hope you all are having a fantastic Wednesday this day. I know there's a lot going on in the world and a lot of heavy hearts, but again, hopefully peace will prevail and good things will happen. And again, Mother's Day is coming up, so let's think of our moms and be grateful for them. So as you can see, Photoshop has created 3 variations here in our properties panel. I have a new generative layer, so I can look at a few options and see which one kind of fits the vibe of the photo, the original photo. I kind of like this one that's a little bit faded out, so I'm going to select this option, and now I'm just going to hold Shift, click and select those 2 layers, and now we can merge these layers. If you right click and hit merge, or you can hit Control E on the keyboard or Command E if you're using a Mac, and those layers will be combined. So now that I hit merge layers, I have this layer that I can drag around, and Photoshop did a really fantastic job, I think, of kind of capturing the feeling of this very old photo that I have of my mother, expanding on it, and now I feel like I have more pixels to work with here. So that's our first image. The next image I want to show you, this happens to be a DNG file. Now, if you have a smartphone, you can take photos in Camera Raw. There's a little bit of a setting on an iPhone, for example, in the top right. I don't have that with me right now, but you can set your phone to take a DNG file. Now, what I can do is just drag this file onto Photoshop here on my taskbar, or you can just open it up and Photoshop opens up Camera Raw. Okay, so Camera Raw is a way that you can, at least with RAW files, control a lot of what's happening actually in the camera. So I can control the light, this photo that I took of a record that I have, name that record, win 2 points. I can start to adjust things like the exposure, the contrast, if I want to drop the shadows down, if I want to drop the blacks down, for example, or if I want to bring those up for detail. But one of my favorite things to do, actually, speaking of detail, is to just play with the sharpening. You can open each of these panels and control aspects of your photo. Okay, so I'm what I call a lazy photographer. I like to shoot in RAW, and then you can just bring that file into Photoshop, adjust some settings, and get a completely different look if you want. There's actually presets as well. Then there's this fun button that says auto. I can just click on that, and Photoshop will, or Photoshop Camera Raw rather, will try to approximate the best settings for this particular photo based on the environment, the lighting conditions, and the file itself. Okay, so if that's a good starting place. If you don't have a lot of time, just hit auto and it will make those adjustments. And then if you want to come in and say up the exposure, play with those blacks like we did before, you can even play with color temperature, white balance. Let's see. And then there's this fun one, color mixer and color grading. So if I want my shadows to have a certain color, maybe a little bluish, and my midtones maybe to be a little bit more green, and my highlights to be kind of yellowish, we can do that all in Camera Raw here. And it's really fast, it's really easy. And the best part is, right now anyways, all of this is non-destructive when it comes to this particular type of file, a DNG file. There's a file created called a sidecar, and that should be in my folder here. Let me go to my downloads real quick. Open in Finder. Okay, I'm not getting my sidecar file here yet, but I think once I commit the changes, that'll pop up. In any case, we can start here. Like I said, I'm going to up my exposure just a little bit and the contrast. And one of my favorite things, the sharpening. So I like to bump this up to about 100. This is purely feeling for me when it comes to photo editing. I play with the settings till I get what I get, right? So I'm one of those creative people who likes to tinker and experiment, and I don't have a specific flow here. So I just encourage you to jump in, play with it, and see what you get as a result. So then you can up the detail and the masking, and that should sharpen my photo up a little bit. And then the other thing I like to add, let's see, where are you? I believe it's, yeah, effects. So I can up the grain in the photo, and that's just going to make it a little bit more, well, for lack of a better word, grainy. So as I zoom in here and you see the photo, right? This is a photo I shot on my iPhone, I believe. And so it is, because it's a smartphone, it's coming in really clean. Like you can see the difference there when I drag the grain down to 0. But if I want just a little bit more texture in the photo, I can drag this grain up. You can go as crazy as you want. Texture and clarity are another 2 sliders you can play with until you get what you want with your photo. All right, so once I hit open, it's going to open it in Photoshop now as a version of this DNG file. So we have image 9509.dng. And we can save this or save a copy. And I'm just going to save it as a JPEG file. All right. So once I've made those changes, we'll just call this me record. And for the file type, select JPEG. JPEG files will be a little bit compressed, but in this case, because the file is so huge, it doesn't really matter. Now, I am still in the Photoshop working environment, so I can just click and drag this into my file just by hovering over this untitled file and drop. It's warning me that there's a different depth. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to hit yes. And now there's my photo. So zooming out a little bit, you can see this photo is pretty large, all right, for my particular composition. So the first thing I'm going to do is just transform this a bit. We'll scale this down, and I'm going to show you 2 things that I can do here to kind of extract some data out of the photo. Now we'll get more into adjusting layers a little bit later, but just want to show you this real quick. So on this layer, I can right click and I can hit mask all objects. We can also go to select subject. Okay, and once I hit select subject, Photoshop's going to look at this layer, process it, and whoops, it's select, or not whoops, but boom, it selected me. All right. And the cool thing here is I can just hit the mask button, and now I have me on this this layer. So a collage, effectively, think of it as a combination of photos, right, that you're going to use to tell a story. And so maybe this is the central part of my composition, and I've got my mom on this side, and maybe I'll pull in some other pictures, but maybe I want to pull something in from my background. I'm from Jamaica. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm thinking I want some sort of mountains or something here in the background, okay? So let's leave Mama here for now, and let's jump over to Adobe Stock and Firefly. So if you haven't checked out Adobe Stock, definitely check it out. For this particular challenge, it'll be a great resource for you, mostly because there's this cool drop down here and we can select free. So if you want to, you can sign up for Adobe Stock and use credits to download premium photos that you might use in your collage. But it's a good resource if, let's see, snow-capped mountains, for example. I might enter something like that. And with free selected, these are images that you can just download and use in your composition. So even if you don't have a specific photo, I really like this one actually because it kind of reminds me of southern Utah. It's a lot more red. It's kind of like the surface of Mars. So that's stock.adobe.com. Thank you, Jack, for posting that in the chat. And you can just find images that you like. And as you find an image, you can hit Save to Library. Okay, and it's saving to my library here, Adobe Live, and I'll show you how that works in a sec. I can hit Save to Library here as well. And maybe there's another mountain I might try in my composition that I might want to use. Or if I want to get really specific, I can search for Utah and just see what pops up. Let's just see what pops up in the free options. So we have some good free options here, some classic scenes from landscape. I think I even recognize that spot myself. Definitely been here, and I've been to arches. So you can get a lot of really, I think I'm going to take this one actually. The Welcome to Utah sign is a nice touch. So you can quickly find images in Adobe Stock and use them. And like I said, I am just syncing them to my library. So because we have Creative Cloud, once I get back to Photoshop here, I'm going to go to Window, Libraries, and let's go back here and select Adobe Live. And we have some artwork here. I'm going to turn that off. And I should have some images as well. All right, there we go. So I've got some textures that I have synced before. And don't fail me now, Adobe Live. Or sorry, Adobe Creative Cloud. Sometimes it does take a minute to sync. And if you do have an issue like that, you can also download the file as well. So to do that, you just go to your images here, and let's say I do want to download this arch file. I'm going to hit license, and once I hit license, it should download as well. There we go. Should download to my downloads, and I can do that for the other files as well, just in case things are a little bit slow or maybe a little bit off. You know how the internet is and technology. Sometimes technology hates me. So I always like having that little bit of a backup. So I'm just going to hit license. Let's go back here. It was this one, I think. I'll license that. And there was the Welcome to Utah sign. Oh, wait. I think that was one more forward. Got a little confused there. There we go. Hit license. So once I have that, I have them in my downloads. And let's see if we're updated here yet. Not yet. Or maybe, let me see here. Yeah, I'll have to double check on that. Oh, there it is, right there. So we have our delicate arch file and some snow-capped mountains there. And let's see if we can drag this arch into our file right now. Hit OK, and there it is. So that's one of the cool things about Adobe Live, or sorry, not Adobe Live, Adobe Stock, is you can just license those images. And oh, wall arch is no more. Sorry, I just saw Robert mention something in the chat there about the arch that I had mentioned. This is delicate arch in Utah. So it's pulling it in as a smart object. I'm going to hit enter, and by smart object, you see this little cloud here. It just means that I can open this in a new document effectively, make some edits, save it, and then it'll update. Or you can just right click on that layer and hit rasterize. So hopefully you're kind of seeing this come together a little bit. Again, next time we're going to take a look at text and a few other things, and then after that we're going to look at layers, how to organize and mask and make some effects so that we can keep telling our story. But even with this strong central element in the middle of my composition, I'm able to effectively partially mask some of these images and start composing something. For those who are a little bit older, you may remember, say, scrapbooking as a thing, right? That's effectively a collage as well. So the other thing we can do here is in Adobe Firefly. If you haven't tried this, you should play with it. It's a way for you to just imagine something. Okay, so I might imagine, for example, a feeling or a thought related to my mom or my upbringing, my background that I want to perhaps visualize, but I don't necessarily have the assets for it. So if you go to firefly.adobe.com, it is free to use. You can generate whatever you want. So here in this text box, I can type something in, and I want to imagine a night sky with maybe a nebula and stars and blue and pink tones. All right, something like that. And let's just see what we get. I'm going to hit generate, and you're pushed into this interface. I'm going to skip my tour here. This isn't the computer I normally use for work, so it's giving me all the tips here. And so we get a beautiful result. It's interesting, right? If we want to update this, okay, so this is maybe a bit more North American or higher, what was that, latitude, it seems. So I'm going to change this to tropical night sky and see, oops, tropical night sky. The other thing we can do here when it comes to tropical night sky, and it does give you some suggestions that if you want to enter, you can adjust your prompt. But I can also change the aspect ratio. And I'm going to do that just so that I have something that's maybe a bit more aligned with my composition. Now, mine was 8:10 landscape. Okay, so depending on what you are creating, if you're doing a square, you might want to generate your artwork in a square, or maybe you need just a narrow strip of something. That's fine. So I'm just going to hit generate and see what we get. And once we get our options, we can download that into Photoshop. One of the great things about Firefly, I think, from a generative standpoint, is Adobe is working on collaborating with creators and making sure that the content that is generated is indeed responsibly done. Okay, so rest assured, these assets will be okay to use. All right. Not going to get too much in the weeds on Firefly today, but you can also generate similar. You can use a photo as a style reference. So if you have something, maybe it's a vintage photo that you want to use as a reference, I could load that into Firefly and have it reference the style while respecting the prompt for subject matter. And we can get similar options, meaning some variations here. All right, so I'm going to actually use this first one. Just hit download. It's going to download to my downloads folder. And I should have that in a sec. There it is right there. And I'm just going to drag and drop this in. Boom. And there I have this beautiful tropical background. All right. Now, I said I wasn't going to get into the weeds on layers, and I'm really not today, but this is kind of bugging me, so I'm going to just drag and drop this to the back. All right. So this is all you need to do if you're following along for the creative challenge today. Try and find some photos, or rather pick a theme, decide on maybe what narrative or story you're trying to tell. Maybe it is that you're going to focus on Mother's Day. It might be something else. In any case, decide on what you want to do. And then once we have that, I'm going to just remove the background here on my mom. Scale her down real quick. But once you've picked your subject matter, just start locating some photos. And next time we're going to take a look at text, continuing to enhance our photos just a little bit, making adjustments. And then we'll take a look at organizing layers, using masks, and adding effects to make things pop. All right. Well, thank you for joining today for today's Daily Creative Challenge. I'll be back next Wednesday, and the Wednesday after that, and the Wednesday after that. And I'd love to see your progress, so be sure to check out the PS channel, Photoshop channel on Discord, and you can post your creations. I'll be keeping an eye on that. And keep an eye out for assets as well moving forward, including my working file, as well as any other assets that we'll be using to help along. All right. Much love. Thanks for joining, and I hope to see you next time right here on Adobe Live. Stay tuned for more awesome content. By the way, we've got tons of creatives that will be joining us today and this week to help you out and help inspire you, hopefully, to get a little bit messy, get a little bit creative, and looks like Idara is up next with pro tips. That's always a good show. So I hope that you stay tuned, that you again get messy, get creative, and I'd love to see those creations. So take care. Oops. There I am. Good to see y'all, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.